You know, we're living through this absolutely massive shift in power. But it's not what you think. It's not about borders or armies this time around. Nope. It's something deeper. It's about where our attention goes. A total redirection of influence. Away from physical places and straight into the digital platforms where we spend, let's be honest, so much of our time.
So let me ask you something, and it might sound a little out there at first. What if your feed is more powerful than your flag? Think about that for a second. That one question, it just perfectly captures this brand new conflict we're all caught in. The old logic of place versus the incredible pull of the platform.
Okay, so to really get our heads around this, we need to talk about a core concept from the source material, gravity wells. It's a great metaphor, right? Just think of them as these massive systems. We're talking social media platforms, entire news ecosystems, even things like crypto protocols. What they do is concentrate our attention, our identity, our everything so intensely that they literally pull us into brand new orbits of influence. And in the process, they're pulling us away from the traditional anchors we used to have, like the nation state.
So that brings us to our first big idea here, a new center of gravity. See, the thing is, the world isn't just collapsing into chaos, even though it can feel like that sometimes. It's more like a gravitational realignment. The old centers of power, they're still there, for sure. But man, they are losing their pull.
I mean, for most of human history, it was simple, right? Where you lived pretty much defined who you were, your whole world. And the media of the day, whether it was the local paper or the national news broadcast, it all just reinforced that shared local reality. But that foundation, that consensus built on geography, well, it's not just cracking, it's fracturing.
All right, Section 2, when consensus had an address. So what did that before time even look like? Let's take a trip back to a time when our shared reality had a very clear, very centralized address.
For decades, the American consensus was basically curated by just 3 broadcast networks. And what's so fascinating here is that each one wasn't just a TV channel, it was a whole vibe, a distinct psychological signal. You had ABC, which was basically the voice of the aspirational suburban middle class, the American dream. Then there was NBC, projecting that urbane, fast-talking coastal elite culture. And finally, CBS, that was the big one, carrying the ideological weight of the entire post-war consensus, the voice of duty, of progress, of the establishment.
Well, that era, it's gone. Completely over. And here's the really crucial point to get. It didn't end with a bang. There was no dramatic revolt. It just ended. Quietly. It happened through this slow drift as our attention just scattered into a million pieces. Eventually, there was no single gravity well left that was strong enough to hold all of us in the same orbit anymore.
So that brings us to Section 3, the great media fracture. Because that old consensus, it didn't just fade away. Oh no. It shattered into all these competing centers of gravity.
And this timeline here just lays it all out so perfectly. You start in the 50s to the 80s with the big 3 dominating everything. Then, boom, 1980, CNN launches, 24-hour news, a big evolution. But the real earthquake? 1996, Fox News. It didn't launch as just another channel. It was designed, deliberately, as a counter-gravity well to pull an entire audience away from the mainstream. And of course, that kicks off a media arms race with networks like MSNBC jumping in. And then, the 2010s, the platform era. And the whole thing just gets decentralized into infinite personalized signals.
And this changed everything. The mission of media completely shifted. It wasn't about informing people anymore or being a steward of some shared story. The new mission was pure, uncut audience retention at all costs. And that meant one thing: amplifying grievance, amplifying emotion. In this brand new war for our eyeballs, being objective, that wasn't a virtue. It was a liability.
Okay, so this brings us to the main event. Section 4, Platforms, the New Worlds. This is where we get into how platforms became the new, absolutely dominant gravity wells, creating entire new digital worlds for us to live in. This quote just hits the nail on the head. When institutions abandon people, platforms move in. See, this drift towards platforms, it's not just about cool new tech. It's about a vacuum of meaning. When those traditional institutions, government, community centers, churches, fail to give us a sense of purpose, of community, of trust, well, the platforms are right there, waiting to catch us when we fall.
So you gotta ask, who drifts first? Who gets pulled into these new orbits? Well, it's the people who are already unmoored.
The ones who've been let down or even actively betrayed by our institutions. People who feel spiritually lost or who descendants of some historical rupture. For these groups, the pull of a platform, it's not really a choice. It's simply the strongest gravitational force in their lives.
And look, this isn't just some abstract theory. We can actually see it happening in the data. Check out this generational divide. A whopping 84% of Gen Z gets their news from social or video platforms. 84%! Compare that to baby boomers, where it's only 31%. That gap, that's not just about a preference for TikTok over the nightly news. It's a signal of a massive, profound shift in where we place our trust and how we build our reality.
So here's the key takeaway for this section, and it's a big one. Trauma bends gravity. It's that simple. It shapes who is most likely to let go of the old systems first. So when you see this heavy reliance on platforms for news, don't just think of it as a media habit. It's one of the clearest signals we have of who has already drifted into these new orbits. All right, that leads us right into Section 5, Protocol over Passport. Let's really dig into the consequences of this shift, because we're entering a world where the rules of the platform are starting to matter a whole lot more than the laws of the state.
This comparison chart just makes it so incredibly clear. On one side, you've got the state. It governs with things we know, right? Passports, courts, physical borders. But then you look at the platform. Your passport is your user ID. The courts, that's just the code. The borders are the protocols that let you in or keep you out. And citizenship? Well, that feels a lot more like a subscription you can join or cancel, doesn't it?
So of course, the old powers are trying to respond to all this, but what we're seeing are three totally different philosophies emerging. In the United States, it's mostly a hands-off laissez-faire approach, letting the platforms govern themselves. In China, it's the complete opposite, command and control, where the platforms basically serve the state. And then you have the European Union, which is taking a regulatory-first approach, really trying to prioritize user rights. These are three very different bets on what our digital future is going to look like.
Okay, which brings us to our last section, Section 6, Choosing Your Orbit. And this is where we turn the lens back on ourselves. In this wild new landscape, what are our choices? How do we choose what to orbit?
Look, we have to be really clear about something. The confusion, the fragmentation we all feel, that's not an accident. It's engineered. It's literally a business model that profits from our distraction, from our anger, from our emotional reactions. But, and this is the important part, the good news is that coherence, that sense of a shared reality, it's not gone forever. We can rebuild it. So how do we do that? The source material gives us 4 really powerful, really practical steps. Number 1, talk to people. Like face-to-face. Crazy, I know. Number 2, read. Widely. Get outside your bubble. 3, resist the pull of immediacy. Just pause. Take a breath and think before you react. And 4, learn with your feet. If you can, travel. Experience the world for yourself, not just through your feet. And that really gets to the core of it, right? A stable center of gravity, a real sense of shared meaning. That's not something you just go out and find. It's something we have to make. We have to build it together through the choices we make every single day. Because the truth is, none of this is set in stone. This new world is still being built right now. The gravity wells are still forming. The rules are still being written. And that leaves every single one of us with a final and pretty powerful question to think about. What will you choose to orbit?